I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book Make 10 Times Leap, no other than Mr. Steve Walsh.
Dan, thanks a lot for having me on the show. Looking forward to it.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Steve, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yeah, I am Steve Walsh. I'm basically I'm a private equity. I'm in private equity. What I do is I help companies grow. Basically, what I do is I bring in capital, people, services, systems, and grow their company. And a lot of companies, this is why I wrote the book. A lot of entrepreneurs are at a certain level, they're comfortable, and if they just do some things, they can actually 10x their business. And that's what the book's about, is how to 10x their business. Entrepreneurs, they're notorious for being comfortable, and what happens is they get into this rut where they think that they can only do it themselves, and I say that hey, there's a better way to do it. And so what I do is I bring in systems, people, and capital. A lot of times it's not the capital they need. It's a lot of times it's about getting them the mindset. That's where in the book, that's where I start. I start with the mindset of the entrepreneur, about how they can get their idea, their company to the next level. That's a lot of times what happens is the entrepreneur, and I've met a lot of entrepreneurs that they're at a certain level and they don't know how to get to the next level. They've never had a mentor, they've never had a coach. And I truly believe that's one of the things that they need, that the starting with is getting a coach, getting into a group to help them grow, because there's a lot of things that they can learn from people that have been in their shoes. There's a lot of people out there that their 10x is somebody's 2x, if you look at it, that way. So, but that's where I started.
Mr. Steve Walsh, thank you so much for sharing your book to the world. So, what does 10x leap mean to the context of business growth?
Yeah, going back to what I just said, a lot of entrepreneurs, the idea of getting their business to the next 10x, the 10 times where they're at. A lot of small businesses don't have to be small. They can grow relatively quick by either doing some acquisitions or just making a few tweaks here or there. The idea is that there's so much information out there now that you can actually use to grow your business. Besides the people that have done it, you can copy off of what they've been doing, and that's where I come in, is bring in some fresh ideas. When you come in, that's the idea. That's where I look in. Is I come from the outside, and I look at what their company's doing and giving them suggestions, and that's where it comes into a learning mindset has to come in play. An entrepreneur has to be willing to open up and have that learning mindset first, and for that ever to happen. And then from there, it's a matter of, okay, where are you at and where do we want to go? That's the thing. You look at a lot of companies out there. Let's say they're at 10 million and they're thinking 20, and I said, well, why not 100? What's stopping you from 100? And so then it's you work backwards from there. What types of systems do you need? What types of people do you need to bring into the company? What types of things do you need to be replaced? A lot of entrepreneurs, what happens is they're working in the business too much, and they need to step out and look into the business, not look. And so what happens is, if they can step it out of the way and bring in people that replace them in those roles that they've been using. I've had some great business owners that have done that, and they brought themselves out of the business, and they 10x their company in no time. I've had some of these great companies that they were at this, I would say, 3 million mark, and they got to 30 in no time. And it's just a matter of them, some tweaks, and the mindset. The mindset was probably the most important thing, that they actually could do it, that they could trust, they could bring in people they could trust. Entrepreneurs are notorious for thinking that nobody else can do it as good as they can. Well, I say that's not true. There's a lot of people out there that are probably better than them, that they can bring in and replace them and do the things that they need to be doing, and stepping back. And that's where it starts. And then from there, it's okay, what kind of systems do we need to put in place? CRMs, as simple as that. What kind of CRM do you have? And from there, it's a matter of, okay, what types of marketing do you have? The marketing is probably one of the most important things. A lot of companies, they push back on that. They don't understand it. They have either a good service or a good product, and they look at it as, okay, they have a good product, they get a good service. Why doesn't everybody want to buy it? Well, nobody knows about it. So you could be the best kept secret. And so that's where I come into play too, is okay, what types of marketing are you doing now, and what types of marketing should we be doing? And that's the thing, is what I preach is, do the things that nobody else is doing. A lot of times the marketing, if your competitor's doing it, probably not one of the things that you need to be doing. You probably need to be looking at people that are a little different than you. Go to look at different markets and see if there's a marketing idea that you can steal from that. I always say the best thing you can do is, instead of creating it, why not steal it? That's the other thing, is too, looking at it that way. And but that's where I go back to again. Innovation and marketing are probably the most important things. The innovative, you continually have to innovate your products and services, and then from there, on top of that, because your competitor is, and on top of that is, you have to, if you're competing, if you want to 10x your company and you want to compete in that area, you have to continually market the way to get your name out there, your company out there, your brand out there. And that is simple as getting on podcasts like this, or getting on direct mail. I'm a big believer in direct mail. That people, they forget that a lot of people use social media, but they forget about this direct mail. Everybody emails, and how many emails do you actually open up? Anymore.
Lots. So, Mr. Steve, how does or what are the key factors that enable business to scale rapidly?
Well, it's like it has to start with the owner, if they're willing to do it. The rapidly is the mindset. It is really the mindset of the owner, and that is to get themselves out of the business, bring in people that can replace them, so that they can look at the bigger picture. That is one of probably the biggest, most important things that they can do right away, is get themselves out of there, and then look at the bigger picture. And then from there, it's a matter of, okay, how can I bring in systems? What systems do I need to bring in? And then on top of that is the systems, and then people, systems, and then capital. And the capital is, a lot of times that's probably the last thing they need, because they have to start with the mindset first. Once they get the capital in, where are we going to put it in place? A lot of times entrepreneurs get capital, and they feel they have to really put it to work right away. Well, the problem is they start spending on things that they shouldn't be spending on. And so they need to have a really good plan to implement that capital. And that capital needs to go into things that are going to move the needle. And one of the things I believe is obviously it's marketing, and not just social media, because a lot of times social media, maybe your target market's they're going to Facebook, and maybe your target market's on LinkedIn. And a lot of businesses, they actually have probably more so, they probably have to do a lot more direct mail and a lot of the things like that. So the marketing, so there's a lot of that type of thing that they need to get working on. Besides their product, they have to continually innovate to their products, and their products, that if you look at some of the great companies out there, I always go back to Apple, go back to Amazon, and Tesla is a good example. Do they have really good products? They do have really good products, but you know what they have really good at? They're good at marketing. They're really good at marketing. If you look at Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, is he a really good money manager? He is, but he's a really good marketer. And so that's where you have to look at is how do I get my name and how do I get my company's name out there and really get it, push the needle with it. So those are the things, and then bring in the capital along with that.
Certainly. So, Mr. Steve Walsh, congratulations for being made 10 times lead best-selling on Amazon. Congratulations.
Thanks.
So let's talk about the not the scaling, leveraging capital effectively. How should business allocate funds after securing outside investment?
Yeah, I mean that's really you put together a plan, and it's a step, looking at the different levers that need to be pulled. Are you weak in certain areas with management? Are you weak in certain systems? Is there some systems that you need to be in place? For instance, is your accounting working well with the inventory? Things like that. Is your PO working with the CRM? So a lot of the things that you have to look at your systems, are they in place that you can scale? And then from there, it's a matter of how are we going to deploy the capital for our marketing plan. Looks like we're going to have to do some marketing, either, and I always say this, a lot of times they want to bring in an outside agency. That's great, but you have to understand what type of marketing they're doing. Because a lot of times what happens, I feel, is that they throw a lot of money at marketing and they don't get any ROI on it. So they have to do is really make sure that you're testing and you're actually seeing some return on that money. Meaning like, and actually measure. I believe I'm a big believer in measuring your marketing plan. If you're not measuring that, you're missing out. And so that's where it comes into play is if we're doing the marketing now, okay, is our products, are they a premium product? If they're a premium product, that's great, but if they're not, so why aren't they? Why are they not a premium product? Do we have the right pricing for that product? The other thing is too, it's so easy for a salesman to go in. I always look at the salesman to go in and say, hey, we can't sell this, but we could sell at this price. Are they really trying to sell it, or is it just easier for them to do that? So the salespeople you have on board, are they really salespeople, or are they order takers? And so it's a matter of looking at the people that you bring in. The people that you probably have had and you want to scale may not be the people that you want in place. They may not be the right ones. And so if they can grow, that's great, but accountability becomes really important when you're trying to scale. And that becomes across the board.
So, Mr. Steve, what would be your advice for those people out there want to put out their business right now?
that want to grow their business right now,
Yes.
I would say the first is um, set the goal first. I would say set the goal first and work backwards, and then you have to really have to figure out what your mindset is. Do you have the mindset to grow it at that level? Do you believe that you can grow at that level? That's the other thing is, do you actually believe that you can grow to that level? And then start bringing in the people. People always say, well, I don't have the capital. I don't have the time to find the right people. Well, you have the time and you have the capital. You can find the people. The people will show up. If you have the right culture, the people will show up. And that's the other thing is too, the culture is really important when you're trying to scale because you need to have a sound culture and you have to have people that really want to be there. I would say if you look at some of the great culture out there, Apple's got a good example. They've had really good culture and people want to work there. They've always wanted to do that. Some of those companies, and there's a lot of companies like that, smaller companies that are like that have great culture. And because a lot of times employees, it's great, the pay is great, but that's really not why they're there. They're typically there for bigger, a bigger purpose. And so that's the other thing is they have to look at how can they be part of this? And so you really have to make that culture a good fit for everybody that's there.
Thank you for your advice, Mr. Steve. So, what would be your short term and long term goals in writing?
Well, I'll tell you what, my long-term goals is I want to get my book out to a lot of entrepreneurs out there to help them grow their business. That's really what I want to do. I like working with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are great to be around. And I want to be out there helping them and growing their businesses. And that's probably one of my great goals right now. And that's where it comes into play is give them a great mindset. Start with that first.
Yes. Good luck to your goal, Mr. Steve.
Thanks a lot.
And yes, you are welcome. And what metric should the entrepreneur focus on to track their 10 times growth progress?
So the metrics, I think if you look at the metrics that they look at, I go back to revenue. Revenue metric is probably the biggest thing is look at where they're at and then look at where they're going and then see where that metric is. They have to adjust. I mean, it's not a straight line. A lot of times they have to do is look at where they're at, where they're stuck. That's where the mentor and the coach really comes into play. Is a lot of times entrepreneurs get struck to a certain level and they feel that they can't they can't go any farther than that. That's when a coach and a mentor really comes into play. And I believe that's really important when it comes to that. If you look at some of the great businessmen and women, that was what they had. They all had one thing. They had a coach. They had a great mentor. So it's really important for them to have that. And
Yes. Totally agree, Mr. Steve. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, in its fifth season, people, fifth season, with Chef Alessandro, one of the specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. So please do listen to our latest episode. We are reading our letter senders all over the world. So please do listen, Food 101, wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Steve, what is the biggest takeaway from Make the 10 Times Leap for entrepreneurs looking to scale their business?
I guess the biggest takeaway is don't be afraid to do it. That's the biggest thing I look at is take that leap and make the change. Entrepreneurs, sometimes you don't know the direction, but if you can get a hold of some people that have done it, that is probably one of the most important things.
Certainly. Mr. Steve Walsh, thank you so much for sharing make the 10 times leap to the world. And we are looking forward for more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So can you please invite our listeners to support your book?
That'd be great. Just reach out to me if you could. Steve at Bicycle. So that
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Steve Walsh. Because if you support him for sure, as I've said, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Mr. Steve, thank you so much for your time.
thanks a lot.
More to come, people. See you soon.